Thanks for staying with us. This is still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Before we begin our conversation this morning on addressing rising insecurity in Plateau and Kaduna State, let's take this background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Insecurity in parts of the country has continually been of concern to everyone. Where the next attack and who the next victims will be remains a puzzle, as the terrorists or gunmen remain unrecognized without a certain identity or location. The recent attack in Bokos and Mango local government areas of Plateau State, which claimed some lives as well as that of a 200-level computer science student of Plateau State University, caused for concern. The university students in Bokos went on a protest following the death of their colleague, who was residing in Chikam but were stopped with the intervention of security operatives. In the aftermath of the attacks, the school's management declared a 2-day mourning and suspended all examinations scheduled for the period. Also, the death of at least 23 persons during the terrorist attack at Anguwa Danko in Kakangi ward of Benin Gwari local government area of Kaduna State cannot just be forgotten in a hurry. Report says that the terrorists abducted an unspecified number of people during the attack. Indigents say attacks by terrorists are frequent in the Benin Gwari area of some parts of Kaduna State, despite the presence of multiple security formations in the state, believing that terrorists have turned Kaduna State into a war zone and made traveling between the state and Abuja and Niger State a nightmare, with impotent attacks on roads, rail and air facilities. Now, what are the efforts of security agents to surmount the recurring terrorist attacks in these states? A golden question that requires desperate answers.
Many thanks, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for the background report. And already seated with us right here in the studio to discuss the topic is AIG Abutu Yaro, a retired AIG Zone 13. He was also a one-time Commissioner of Police, Edo State, Zamfara and Imo, as well as Commissioner of Police, Federal Operations, Commander, Counter-Terrorism Training School, Port Harcourt. In fact, it's a long list. I will have to stop there. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. We also have seated with us a regular and, if you like, a very vast resource person as far as security matters are concerned. It's a pleasure to have with us again Dr. Kabiru Adamu, a security risk management expert. Many thanks for joining us, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you. Good morning.
Okay, we have also Mohammed Ali, security expert, who is joining us from our Kaduna studio. Mohammed Ali, you are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good. Also from our Jos studio, we have Brigadier General John Temlong. He's the first Commander, Multinational Joint Task Force, former President, Alumni Association of National Defense College and Security Consultants. It's a pleasure to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you. All right, so let's kickstart our conversation this morning with the AIG. Well, let's start with the fact that, in your opinion, what are the peculiarities with Kaduna and Plateau attacks?
Thank you very much. My opinion with respect to the subject matter in describing their peculiarities are as follows. One, these two areas can be classified as the mineral belt, solid mineral belt of Nigeria, in the real sense of it. Two, these two areas are very strong agricultural belt. And three, these areas has vast land. The type we normally describe as ungoverned spaces with sparse population dispersal. The demography of this area is very sparse and easy for intrusion and to some reasonable extent occupation by whoever wishes to. And four, another peculiarity of these areas is the fact that they are largely within the domain of no real government presence. When I mean government presence, I mean in terms of a refined and effective structure of local governance, a refined and effective security presence, and the culmination of some of these factors make their own peculiarity to stand tall, and concurrent disturbances by whoever wish to, in whatever design, to make it easier. And lastly, too, the areas, to an extent, is occupied largely by locals who, for want of description, are not really organized in very strong traditional administration or community administration of historical essence that can be harnessed to make things work in the way they're supposed to. Okay. So these are my understanding of the peculiarities of the area so described. For now, in our further discussion, some other factors may present itself.
All right, many thanks, AIG. Right. Dr. Adamu, I'm not sure we can put a finger as to the number of times we've had you come here to talk about insecurity. And also we have also narrowed it down most times on Plateau and Kaduna. Why do you think that Plateau and Kaduna states have not left the news as regards insecurity?
Just to build on what the retired AIG has said, I agree with the factors he has enumerated. I just want to add the issue of the social dynamics in the two states. There are states that are largely inhabited with a complex mix of different ethnic backgrounds, and then of course you can add religious too, even though there are just two religions, but those religions have also typically been divided along those ethnic lines. So you have now two divisions based on their religions, and then of course the ethnicity. The other factor is also the political dynamics at play. Some of the I would say social media disinformation, misinformation and propaganda that we're seeing at the moment emerging from especially Plateau State is the consequences what we're seeing. Statements either have been misinterpreted, statements made by certain persons in government, or whether they are misinterpreted or they are real. I'll give you an example. There was a time when the government set up a committee, and then it went viral that there was no Muslim in the committee. That was picked by social media. Until date, it's circulating. The government has come out to dispel that, but it's still a factor. Some people are still capitalizing on it. Recently, there was the meeting at the Office of the National Security Advisor where he invited governors from the northern state. The Plateau State governor made a statement at that meeting that some persons in the social media have picked and they've put out there. So that's the kind of misinformation, disinformation and propaganda that I'm talking about. Also to build on the point around ungoverned spaces, the nature, the topography of those two states is undulating. The forested parts, the mountainous parts, and then of course the coterminous borders that it shares with some states, in the case of Kaduna and Niger as an example, in the case of Plateau State, Bauchi, and then of course the forests that run through there. So all of these are some of the factors, and I think also to buttress the point made by the AIG, the inability, and again I say this with all sense of responsibility, the inability of the two states to harness and understand these peculiar challenges and put up a structure, a security structure, especially a criminal justice system that is able to identify offenders and then punish those offenders, would have prevented what we're seeing at the moment. I mean, the footage of the attack on the State University went viral. These guys came in the daytime. Now, the simple response would be the fault of the federal security agencies. But then states who have been afflicted with such dynamics, they've been able to come up with model ideas. And they always use the example of Lagos. Lagos has been able to come up with at least a security trust fund that is supporting the federal structure. Now, we haven't seen that. In the case of Kaduna, under El-Rufai, they started this program of homeland security, where every quarter they would release reports. Now, what it did was, people didn't realize that it put the federal agencies on their toes, because the state government now had a verifiable means of measuring progress. So it's not that one arm of the federal security agencies would come and say we're making progress when the state has its own measurement of that progress or not. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a continuation of that. So this is not to blame anyone, but to say this is the situation. If you want to see improvement, then you need to admit that you have the kind of peculiarities that we're listing out there. And then what model are you going to put to now address those peculiarities? The challenge, as it were, at the moment, there is no active model for addressing the peculiarities that those states have. And the sad part is immediately after the elections, if I remember well, in March actually 2023, I personally went on air and tried to caution that the dynamics that we saw, the negative mobilization that we saw during the lead up to the governorship elections, and to an extent the presidential elections, that whoever wins that election will spend the major part of his anyway, there was no her, the major part of the first few years of his administration to manage the consequences of that negative mobilization. And that's what we're seeing at the moment, sadly. So I'm sure in the furtherance of our discussion, we'll talk about some solutions that may be active.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Adamu, for your opening shots there. And I believe that the other guests are listening. So let's move to Kaduna, where we have Muhammad Ali, a security expert. What are the main issues regarding the state of insecurity in Kaduna State? Muhammad.
At stake is the proliferation of small arms and light weapons all over the place. That is actually helping in increasing the conflicts we are witnessing, both in frequency, intensity, and even geographical spread. And this, as we all know, is having a very negative impact on humanitarian and economic activities of the communities affected, and by extension the state at large. This again is the more reason why government needs to be on its toes to do the needful in order to bring an end to the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, particularly those locally produced and those that are smuggled into the country through our porous borders. And this is the more reason why, just like Dr. Kabir Adamu rightly pointed out, a lot needs to be done, particularly having regards to the build-up of certain things that were done before the 2023 general elections. So it is now time for us to sit back and take a cue. Why is A and B happening, or why does this happen in this place? These are some of the things I think that we need to do, because as we speak today, Kaduna is going through a very, very serious challenge security-wise, particularly if we look at 7 local governments that we can regard as the frontiers where these bandits operate day in, day out. And this is the more reason why something needs to be done, and quickly too.
So much, Muhammad Ali. Brigadier General Tim Long, you are in Plateau State. First, I'd like you to give us a sense of the security situation in that state at the moment, and also speak to us about the latest, state of insecurity in Plateau State.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the security situation in Plateau at the moment is, especially in Bokos and Mangu local governments, has actually been bad for these few days. The STF and other security agencies had done a great job in curbing the insecurity in those two local governments, especially when it broke down towards Christmas and the rest. But unfortunately, you have what we call crisis entrepreneurs, whose business and stock and trade is making a lot of fortune out of crisis, and so they do not want peace to prevail. Some of these things, like rightly pointed out by colleagues either in the studio or in Kaduna, is that the social media too has not done anything good. There's so much that comes out of the social media that if you read and you are not somebody with a good heart, you think the world is collapsing the same day. There is also the collapse of the social, normative social order in actually in Nigeria, because where you find out that the social order where you had elders, you had youth and children and the rest, and there was respect for people were their brothers' keepers, is no more. Coupled with the fact that in Plateau here, the climate change situation has made it so difficult for the nomadic people to have good pasture for their lands up north, and then the insecurity around Zamfara and Beringwari area, Kasina and the rest, were the desertification pushing them. So there is a lot of pressure. If you look at Plateau, Benue, the Middle Belt area, there's a lot of pressure here, where there is a contest for land and water between farmers and herders. So some of these things are part of the cumulative effects of climate change. But in fact, the important thing is that we have not been able to get the grasp of what we are supposed to do, probably understanding the problems, because if you get the narrative wrong, and some of these narratives are driven by the social media, you will not get to know, to do the correct thing, because if your diagnosis is wrong, you'll be treating malaria instead of treating typhoid fever. So I think what we need to do as a people is to sit down and agree that, look, we have a real problem. Criminality is taking over both in the social space and in government. And there are those who are even in government, they are protecting criminals outside there. So I think there's a need for, on our own side, to make sure that criminals are exposed, criminals are not given breathing spaces. If you see what happened in Oyo State, that's a classical example of where the community itself is resilient and do not want criminals to give them space. When those Yoruba agitators stormed the Oyo State House of Assembly, you could see that the citizens resisted them. The citizens rose up in unison, pointing out to the houses of those who they suspected or those who were involved in those criminal acts, or those not even just criminal, but they are quite a treasonable act. They brought them out, they shot them out, and then their houses were demolished and the rest. So it means the society itself has to rise up against these criminals. And government seem not to be understanding the situation. So it all depends, again, like we pointed out, if it's time for governance now, it's no more time for politicking. It's time to heal the wounds of what came out prior to the elections. It's time to make sure that everybody is part and parcel of the society. And it's time for good governance now, both at the local level and at the state level. We do not expect the federal government to come and take over governance at the local level and at the state level. And sometimes people seem to think that the federal agents are all over. It's not possible. Even in China or India, where they have armed forces in millions, they can't cover everywhere. It is a society itself that will be able to police itself. And that's why I say there's a breakdown of the social order. Because if you have a criminal society, they bring him. They have a way of punishing criminals. They have a way of even doing alternative dispute resolutions. They have a way of even judging people who have done something that is bringing dishonor and shame to the community. But these days, you find out that even the parents are involved in criminal acts and their children are seeing them. And so when these children see them, they think that's the normal thing to do. So if your father is doing something that is bad, I mean, it's nothing to a child. It's something that is good. So I think even the parents itself, like I've always been saying, we must take back our society from criminals. And because you don't even understand why, if you saw what happened in Birningwari, is what we call scorch the earth method. If you go there...
All right, Brigadier General Temlong, if you said there's a breakdown in the social order, is there also a breakdown in traditional institutions in this country? Because, I mean, we expect, like you have said, that the community would rise up and defend themselves. If the social order is the reason why that is not happening, what about the traditional institutions stepping up to protect their domains? What's going on in Plateau State? What are the traditional leaders doing?
Are part of the social system in the states, in the communities. So it is, they cannot work in isolation. They are part and parcel of the society. And so even the traditional rulers are doing it. You have had cases in Zamfara, in some areas where traditional rulers have been involved in these criminal acts. So it all behoves, and they too are part of the society. And if the society itself is seeing criminality as the norm, in these people with guts, those who can stand their own and damn the consequences and say, look, let us take back this society from criminals, and we'll decide to do that. Sometimes you might even end up your life in the process. But then, at the end of it, you will succeed. But then, the traditional institution has to come out clean to say that, look, they are against this. Some of them benefit from these criminal acts, because these criminals come with a lot of juicy gifts to them. And the thing is that they don't even ask their sources. Have you not seen people who have just been released for some questionable things, being tabbed as traditional rulers, given titles? I mean, these are things that even the government itself should start regulating some of these titles that are given to individuals, because if you have some questionable thing around you, yes, they could say that the man is being witch hunted or anything, or it's a witch hunt. But I think we must give some time for tensions to cool down. So I think government itself too have to start regulating some of these people who are being given titles here and there, and they use us as a cover to continue perpetuating the criminal acts. Definitely we'll have to have a look at all the facets of our society. That's why I say take back our society from government, criminals in government, from the society. And this society includes even traditional rulers. So we must do that. I think that's the important thing. We must put our lights on everybody, whether you are a traditional ruler, you are a governor, you are a commissioner, you are in the military and the rest. We must start policing ourselves in the police. And if you are living questionably, your source of livelihood is questionable, and you are displaying affluence all over the place, and we see it. I mean, nobody questions it. Instead, we worship it. That's the breakdown of social order. In those days, I told people, when I got my car loan, I had to go and tell my father that I had taken car loan to buy a car. Today, when you put somebody in an appointment, the next thing is driving a jeep of 160 million or 200 million, and people are clapping for him that he's a good person. If he comes with a rickety vehicle, they'll start making all sort of noise. So those are the breakdown of the social order. People do not even question your source of income or your source of wealth. So we have to do something in that light. The traditional rulers will receive him that this is our boy, or you organize a delegation to go and greet him and say, and they will tell you this is our time. So is that not the breakdown of social order? We have to take back our country. Take it back from criminals, take it back from even those who sit down and see of our culture, and if they are living in questionable ways, we should take it back from them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brigadier General Temlong, for your contribution there. The need for us to take back our country and also to bring back the social order that seems to have broken down. Now that the foundations for the insecurity in the two states have been laid, let me come back to the studio now, AIG Yaro. And some of the issues raised is the challenge of social media, misinformation, and the state not having a structure, to tackle these challenges when they arise, and the proliferation of arms and many other things, like the breakdown of social order that the Brigadier General just stated there. But some people also say that to a greater extent that one of the major problems is because most of the suspects or the culprits are youths, and as a result of lack of gainful employment, which has become so worrisome. So how worrisome can this be? Is this also one of the major challenges that we are facing right now? I mean, the Brigadier General also talked about the breakdown of social order, talking about the traditional institutions not rising to their responsibility. How can we begin to tackle all this?
Excuse me. Thank you very much. I think it is important for us to do some fair level of critical thinking with respect to this discourse. The subject matter was a case study of Plateau
and Kaduna State.
And Kaduna State, especially southern part of Kaduna. I believe we need to think deeper and ask ourselves, what makes this scenario so peculiar and more devastating? A corollary to that is the Benue Valley, which consists of largely Benue State. The intensity of banditry and local terrorism there is inexplicable. Coming back to our subject matter, this is not social. It is what we created that social media, whatever they call them, they amplifies. They are not commenting on inexistent situations. They are amplifying real life, real time situations. Why is it so?
But not correctly.
Not correctly. Look, if you create negativity, the amplification will always go in the way it is so created.
Okay.
We need, as Nigerian national, we need to ask ourselves, why is it that this axis has serious proclivity to attacks, banditry, and communal disorganization? It goes beyond lack of social cohesion. Is there any society that is assuredly very cohesive? Why is it that some states in Nigeria, even in the northern axis, seems not to having prevalence of this kind of thing we are discussing? Like Jigawa and Kano. Are they not having rural communities there? Are they not having farmers there? Are they not having peasants there? Are they not having unemployment there? We need to do critical thinking, as they normally teach us in National Defense College. Why is it so? To me, as Nigerian nationals, if we fail to analyze the real cause, but to continue to discuss the effects, we make ourselves the laughing stock. Like the Plateau. There's another robust part of Nigeria that has same climatic condition, like Plateau State, Gembu region, having our boundary with the Cameroon. The same climatic condition, the same vegetation, the same attraction. But the kind of calamitous situation we are witnessing on the Plateau, the one of Plateau State, does not exist there. Why is it so? If it is grazing, luxurious grazeland, don't we have it in Gembu axis? Are we having this kind of community annihilation there? To me, we need to think deeper. Even this part of Kaduna that we're talking about, why is it that the areas of Kaduna that is so infested falls within the microlingual communities? Why is it so? Why is it so? These communities have been there, predated us. Of course, like I said in my opening remark, some of these communities will still have historical distortions. There are communities that have been liable to invasion in many ways in the time past. And the carryover from that is part of what we are going to call witnessing. So, to me, we need to do more than we are saying. We see unemployment. Is the rate of unemployment in southern Kaduna or Plateau, is it higher than Jigawa? Is the rate of illiteracy in rural Plateau or rural southern Kaduna, is it higher than Jigawa? Why are we not having rural banditry there? And leave that one for researchers and security security experts of whatever persuasion to look into this nexus. We have to save Nigeria. We can't be talking in academic flavor and we believe that this problem will be solved. It goes much more than that.
All right, AIG.
I have not finished, madam. Permit me to take it slowly.
Okay.
Because these are sensitive national issues. Look, these communities have not broken down. They are there. They are micro communities, having rulership, having kingship. But we not allow there to be. And how? Why should a whole community be obliterated? 300 people killed? What is the definition of war? If somebody levying war against your country imply carrying arms, attacking community, killing people in large number, what would that for a definition of war? It's not setting up task forces to do security. To me, what is on the ground is a very ripe scenario for full declaration of war. And we have war experts who, if you give them direct order, written, provided, and with a mandate and a timeline to do the needful, we have war experts trained and maintained by the Federal Republic. Tell them to do the needful time frame. Because I believe that if you carry arms against part of the society or the country, you kill people in mass, en masse. I mean, there's no that definition of war. Go to the dictionary definition of war. It's carrying arms, organizing arms, and killing people, killing property. We cannot sit down and be talking about societal cohesion. We need to respond in the same way these people are levying war on the Federal Republic. It's not the function of the locals or the function of the traditional ruler to respond to war situation. What is happening is affecting our statehood. Our statehood. Let me tell you, my sister, we are not the only multilingual group. Go to our neighbors, strategic neighbors here, Cameroon. Northwest of Cameroon is the northeast of Nigeria. The rural communities there, are they undergoing through what we are going through?
But the way we combat war will be different from the way we fight insurgency.
What I'm telling you is that we say we have experts who manages war. In my thinking, let us give them authority to levy war. They know the instrument, the apparatus, the team, the mode to apply in each case.
So are you saying our security agencies do not have the capacity to
That is
handle
not
the
what
situation?
I'm saying that people are, in my thinking, these people are living war of the federation. And what they are doing is threatening our statehood.
So why do
Therefore, we need to apply statecraft. Listen to my English, madam. Applying statecraft means many things. Applying statecraft. Statecraft has to be applied, excuse me. It's not talking about traditional ruler, community boys, community girls. Excuse me. People are levying war against our country. And a good number of them are assisted by foreign elements. In the course of my police in Nigeria, I have arrested many suspects who were found with arms disorganizing local community and who are unable to even speak our local languages. Who told me, direct interview, that they came from somewhere and they came and merged with their local comprados and they begin to torment the local community wherever they are. And that was why there was a time in this country that one of our political leadership even directed us that if we come across anybody with AK-47 in the bush or wherever, who is not a state actor, we should bring him down. These are the kind of responses that is necessary. Some of these people we are talking about are not our nationals. They come and incubate with the local collaborators and they mindlessly kill our people, disorganize our society, and make our life unbearable. Of course, we are not the only one. Go to Ghana, go to Cameroon, rural communities are bound as we are.
If you say foreigners are involved in this act, how come we as a people, the Nigerian nation, I'm talking about from the federal government to the state level, and also security agencies, have not been able to curtail this if there's no partnership with Nigerians?
That is why I say apply statecraft. Statecraft means instrument of power of the state, instrument of power of the Federal Republic. Dr. Aminu, am I communicating?
Yeah.
Applying statecraft means whatever strategic and national element that is necessary to preserve the Federation of Nigeria must be invoked.
Okay, Dr.
Which of course includes military, diplomacy, intelligence, any machinery available to the state. When your state is at war, everything is coming to it, and it will be headed by the military.
Okay.
In this tip, it's not as simplistic as some commentators used to talk about. It's a determined and organized criminality to bring Nigeria to its knee.
Okay, thank you.
And it's persistent. In the last 15 years,
Exactly.
Nigeria has never arrested. We can't go on like this.
All right, thank you very much, AIG. Now let's come to Dr. Adamu now. I mean, you have listened to his perspective there, and I remember that earlier on you talked about most of the state not having a structure to be able to combat, all these challenges, just like he also mentioned now. And he's saying that we should begin to, involve more of our military and all that. Do you call for a training and retraining of our security personnel in order for us to be able to tackle this major challenge here now?
Okay, thank you. Just to make some clarification of what I felt the AIG was saying. First off, in Kaduna State, it's not just Southern Kaduna. Like our Mame Bello from Kaduna did mention, there are 7 local governments, and not all of them are in Southern Kaduna. In fact, Birnungwari, which is more or less the hotspot, Giwa, Chikun, they are not Southern Kaduna local governments. And these are facts. Figures speak to the fact that these are the frontline local governments. So the narrative that is being painted out there that it is Southern Kaduna, no doubt Southern Kaduna is also being affected, but I don't think I want to leave the audience with the impression that it's just Southern Kaduna. It's important we make that clarification. It's also very important. I hear the AIG when he speaks of foreigners coming in. That is just one aspect of the threat element affecting Nigeria. We have to disaggregate for each. And I love what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu attempted to do in the Renewed Hope agenda. What we're hoping, expecting, in the lifespan of the administration, they will create frameworks for addressing these security challenges across the 6 geopolitical zones. And to do that, just like the AIG recommended, we need to study in a sociological manner the reasons for the conflict in the 6 geopolitical zones. They're all different. When you go to the south, southeast, southwest, northeast, north central, northwest, there are differences in the complexities of the conflicts in those locations. So the onus is on the coordinating elements within the national security architecture, the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Minister of Defense, Minister of Interior, Minister of Police Affairs, to an extent the Presidency and the SGF. They need to come up with this framework as quickly as possible. If you ask me, they should have come up with it yesterday. That will guide our state governments in coming up with the structures that we need to address. Because till date, as we're talking, security remains in the exclusive list. Let's not be lost in that conversation. And because it remains in the exclusive list, the federal government has more responsibility. Even though within the Constitution, still, the state governments do have their responsibility. The Constitution allows our governors to direct these federal agencies that are deployed in their state. Forget what governors say that they can't. The Constitution allows them. They are chairmen of the State Security Council. They have that power. Now, point I'm trying to make when I mentioned that in Plateau and Benue, they've not come, and Kaduna, they've not come up with the effective and efficient structures for managing the peculiarities of their state. Now, the peculiarities of their state are known to us. And that's one other point I would like to clarify when the AIG mentioned that there are ethnic militias involved in this conflict.
Yeah.
Apart from ethnic militias, there are what I prefer to call non-state armed groups, including terrorist groups in the case of Kaduna. Then there are the bandits. And these bandits, they have different manifestations. They include the armed herdsmen, they include their collaborators. In fact, there is an echo space of involvement across different layers. So if you know you have that in your state, what are you doing to stop it? The most simplistic mechanism that states have come up with is to create vigilantes. And sadly, the creation of those vigilantes has created another problem. Because what we saw in the states where they created vigilantes, even in the case of Plateau State as an example, the principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion were not followed. A particular ethnic group will probably dominate those vigilantes. And because when they were being created, there was a perception that another ethnic group is responsible for the challenges. So even innocent members of that other ethnic group were now being targeted. And now you now have a situation where the ethnic group, because they are not being protected, they also seek to weaponize themselves to protect themselves. Now in all of this, and I love what Mohammed Bello mentioned, this issue of issue of weapons proliferation. We need to wake up from the slumber that we are in as a country. Till date, we do not have that commission that ECOWAS has recommended for addressing the challenge of small arms and light weapons. We have a center that is domiciled in the Office of the National Security Advisor. That center is operating, quote unquote, under the Office of the National Security Advisor. What ECOWAS recommended is for us to have an independent commission, and it is because ECOWAS recognizes the magnitude of the problem. That is why it recommended a commission. Now, parallel to that center, we have another, and I use this word with all sense of responsibility, illegal commission that is also operating for small arms and light weapons. Why is it illegal? The National Assembly passed an act, a bill rather, and put it forward to the president. That bill has not received presidential accent, but the chairperson of that commission, quote unquote, is operating more or less illegally. He has come on national TV to say he's still waiting for presidential accent. So at the moment, we have two structures that are running independently and trying to manage an existential problem. Every security practitioner that you speak with will admit to you that we have a problem of small arms and light weapons, yet we do not have the structure for mopping up those small arms. So one of the first things we need to do is to make sure that center that is currently in the Office of the National Security Advisor now becomes a commission. And the only body that can do that is the Office of the National Security Advisor, and working together closely with the National Assembly. They need to pass that bill. The President needs to give his accent so that we have that. Well, with direct response to your question regarding what states can do, once that framework has been created, each state needs to come up with, in the minimum, at least a commissioner, or either on Homeland Security or local government affairs or whatever the administration they want to call it. The second thing they need to do is to make sure they have an intelligence wing that is tied to an early warning system. Now, incidentally, Kaduna has all of these things. The only challenge is that they are not effective for some reasons. The early warning system in Kaduna is one of the best that we've seen in the country. Headed, and then of course they also have a peace commission. The Plateau State also have a peace commission. Okay. But all of these things that I've mentioned must be put together using monitoring and evaluation mechanisms that would allow the governor to measure the performances. And what is the best way to measure the performance? If today we're having attacks in Bokos and Mangu, by the next 3 months, there is no attack in all the local governments in Plateau State. He knows that these functions of these structures that he has created are working. If, however, we continuously, like we've been seeing over the past few months, attacks, then something is wrong. And that is what M&E will do to them. So in summary, the structures that would tie in with the existing federal security arrangement and reduce the security challenges in the state is what is missing.
So it's not about training and retraining of the personnel.
It takes more than that.
For them to be able to handle the...
It takes more than that. Apart from training, you need numbers, you need equipment. I talked about diversity, equity, and
intelligence.
When you say numbers, what do you mean by numbers?
So for instance, no matter how well you want to address security, if you do not have presence, and of course the force multipliers, Madam spoke about intelligence, it's an example of the force multipliers. We talk about getting the buy-in of the people. What structures have we created? For instance, if I'm in one small town in Vom, in Jos South local government, and I notice, bandits with guns, which number do I call? How quick can the response that I need come to me? So those are the kind of structures that I mean. Early warning systems as an example. When I see something, how do I say that something?
Okay.
Have those numbers been created? Are they effective? Have we, earlier when we were talking about traditional rulers, part of the challenge is that we have whittled down the power of the traditional rulers. And this happened under the Obasanjo administration. A local government chairman today can remove a first-class emir. A local government chairman. In fact, if there is any disservice that was ever done to Nigeria, it's that we need to reverse that. We need to take it back, in fact, not just at the state level, at the federal level. Let our traditional rulers be revered, let them be respected. Let no governor have the capacity to remove a traditional ruler, frankly. Because they are institutions that should represent our statehood. If we continue to disrespect them in the manner that we're disrespecting them, I mean, all of us, one way or the other, if you remove all the layers of what we are, we're back to that traditional system. So we have allegiance, as it were, to a traditional ruler. Let's give them back that respect that they should deserve. The same way that the other countries that we're copying from, I mean, the King of England at the moment. Imagine touching him, what the English people would do to you. So that's, and then, but today, like I said, a local government chairman can, who is the highest ranked traditional ruler, a local government chairman can remove him. That's a disservice that we don't. So we need to strengthen back that system. The point I'm trying to make is the fabric for security in the country at the moment is not strong.
Okay.
And the reason why it's not strong is because the security governance structure that we have, for one reason or the other. I mean, I can give you examples. The National Security Council, when was the last time it sat? The Nigeria Police Council, when last did it sit? All of these are structures that are in the Constitution to manage security challenges. Unfortunately, they are not.
All right, thank you, Dr. Zamu, for the points that you have made. I'd like to get to Plateau State now because, Plateau is one state that a lot of people are worried about. And I would like Brigadier General Temlong to speak and react to some comments made by the AIG. Now, with the kind of information that, security operatives have as regards the situation, why is it that it's taking too long, for Plateau State, either the government, or seeking support from the federal government to handle the problem? The issues have been there for so long, and then looking at the number of deaths that it has taken, is it that the Plateau people are encouraging it, or they like it, or I mean, because why I'm asking is because some soldiers were killed, very sadly, and we see the actions that have been taken to ensure it doesn't repeat itself, and to ensure that those who were involved in that crime are brought to book. Plateau people are killed, you know, I mean, I don't want to mention in the numbers. Speak to us, really. Is it that you are a brigadier general? I mean, you have some of information. You understand what is going on in your terrain. Why are your hands folded and, you know, you're watching events?
Thank you very much for that question. And quite frankly, we need to correct some of this narrative that is coming out from the studios. You know, when I said narrative, and I said those who said the narrative, it means is the understanding of what the problems are. And I did give an example of you administering malaria treatment for typhoid. I think what is coming out from the studios speaks to that. Thankfully, Dr. Kabir has tried to correct some of them. And when I say the breakdown of the normative social order, I think that is clear, and I'm sure, I'm happy you people there got to understand, but it looks, people are looking at the social order as if it's not. And quite frankly, you see, when you have two power sources, what Dr. Kabir Abdamu is thinking about or advocating is going to create anarchy. Why, in the military regime, the military tries to harness power by using traditional rulers, because we are not all over the place. We didn't canvass to be elected. We took power by force. But in the civilian regime, the civilians are wary of a second power source which challenges them. And so if you start allowing traditional rulers and say that it is the federal government that will start dealing with that, moving them, you are going to create more problems for people than that. Even the constitutional monarchy in UK itself has been reduced. The powers have been whittled. They are no more what they used to be. They pay taxes now. They didn't used to pay taxes and all sort of things. So I think we have to look at this thing without sentiments and look at the national security concerns and components. Coming back to the plateau, you see, there is a misunderstanding of what the problems are. And I did say they are multifaceted. I gave an example about the climate change, the struggle for land. It's quite alarming. If you come to some places in Plateau today, the indigents have been dispossessed of their land. We cannot deny that. Go to places in Barakin Ladi and in Bokos, in Riom and the rest, and find out that all those people have been displaced. Recently, there is an attempt to get them back to their ancestral lands. So we have to understand this clearly. Bringing Gembu as an example, fortunately, I was the commander of 23 Armored Brigade some 20 or so more years ago. And Gembu was under my command. So the population of Gembu itself is so sparse. It's not up to a local government population here in Plateau. To the land, if you go and see the vast lands that people went and got there, they can't even farm them now. People took hundreds and hundreds of hectares as land. They are lying fallow there. Nobody is farming them. So Gembu can never be an example of what it is. And in any case, when you get to Gembu, you need a marketplace. Where do you get the market? So if you agree with me and understand what climate change is and is real and what it is doing to the middle belt, then you understand the problems. Now, Plateau State will have what we call Operation Rainbow. And thank God I was one of those who crafted this thing. It is an early warning and an early response mechanism. Early warning in the sense that it's supposed to be deployed right down to the polling units, where they know everybody in that polling units and they are taught and they build up their capacity on what to observe and what to report on with a clear lines of communication. Unfortunately, we have not been able to implement this thing fully. Part of the things that Dr. Kabir is talking about is, again, this social media thing that they tell you, oh, they've, those Operation Rainbow people are supposed to operate within their own local communities. You don't recruit them from Lantang and take them to Jos North. No. They are supposed to be within the community, those who are known men of proven character, and those who are supposed to be within that community. So I think, again, this narrative, what the social media carries here and there, compounds our problem. The problem in Plateau is that, one, there is issue of land. People want to take over the land. Two,
General, I would have to pause you at this point just to take a commercial break. When we come back, you continue your line of thought from where you stopped. So we'll take a break now. The conversation continues. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Before we went on that break, Brigadier General Temlong was trying to speak to us about some measures taken by Plateau State to curb insecurity. Could you go on, Brigadier General Temlong?
Thank you very much. We know I've talked about the issue of land grabbing, displacement of the indigenous people from their lands. We talked about now criminality. You see, criminality has no religion and no tribe. I thank the AIG for saying that some of these foreign elements are in cohorts with the indigenous people. So criminals don't have tribes, they don't have religion. Their only common language is criminality. So you have criminality playing out in areas too. And there are what you call reprisal attacks. You see, when people feel hurt and feel they have been, you know, if you look at that community, justice is what is required. When you come and level a community, you kill people, and then some people who probably would have been picked up, and tomorrow you see them again in the society. So the transitional justice issues are quite alarming. The criminal justice system must be strengthened. And like I said, there are criminals even in government. They protect those criminals out there too because they work in cohorts. So I mean, we have to start looking at those issues too, because when there are criminals are arrested from whichever side, whether it's from the herders or from the indigenous people and the rest, the law should take its course. But if immediately after some time you see them coming back into society again, there is a sense of lack of justice, and people will want to take the laws into their hands. And that's what is called reprisals, attack and the rest. So it keeps going on, ding-dong attack, to and fro. Now you see again the issue of governance. We have talked about good governance here. The time for governance now, no more politicking. So the struggle for space in governance, the struggle for inclusion, the struggle to belong to everything, you know, to even the pie. If you look at even the way some of these palliatives are even shared, some people feel excluded. So you mean it requires now a sort of governance structure that is inclusive, is building up everybody, and a system that tries to heal the wounds that had been opened by the politicking.
General, but you know, taking a cue from what AIG said, some of these issues you're mentioning, you know, are in other states, and we don't get to see the kind of insecurity we're seeing in Plateau. This economic condition, palliatives not being proper. I mean, it's across the country, but we're not seeing the kind of you know, insecurity that we're seeing in Plateau. Why is Plateau different? And then could you talked about climate change as a factor, you know, people, you know, land issues and all of that.
Grounding.
Why has the government not giving titles, you know, to this land, just so that people know, you know, what is theirs and what is not theirs? So, I mean, if you encroach, you know, the right thing can be done. I feel like the needful can be done.
It's not like sitting in the studios and talking about the land, like giving title to a land here. If you go to a local government like Bokos, you think we are Plateau, and Plateau means it's a flat, high ground. Well, it's a flat ground. And you know, they are quite vast. And so even if you have title, how do you defend those areas? If you have, let's say, 1,000 hectares of land, and then you start cultivating halfway, these people move. In fact, even as at yesterday, the herders invaded my farm here in Jos, my fish farm here in Jos. So what do you do before? And they are more in numbers than my workers. And if they had attempted to do this, they would have killed them. So these things are real, because this movement of cattle and the herders down to the plateau are real. So it's not a matter of saying that it's different, it's the same. And that's why you have the same thing in Benue too, because it's a land. Unfortunately, it was somebody from the Middle Belt who brought the medicine for trypanosomiasis. If not so, in those days during the rainy season, by this time they would have been moving back because of tsetse fly. But now, even right now, you have herders as far as Oyo, Abia, and the rest, and fighting people there too. So it's not peculiar to Plateau. The Plateau situation is that the land, if you notice, the first ranch that were established by the Europeans was here on the Plateau, where you have Frisian cattle, and it's still on. So it means it is a land that is good for rearing of animals. So that pressure is still very much there. And again, you have the effect of drugs. Even with the unemployed youth, drugs plays a lot of parts in criminality. And so if you have your youth getting more into drugs, you can see even what played out. Some of the youth, sometimes even with their bare hands, they go for reprisal that somebody killed them. They even attack soldiers. And because soldiers have been exercising a lot of restraint, the last time the students stripped a policeman and left just his pants on. And he had his arms with him. If he had not exercised a lot of restraint, if he has gone by the rules of engagement, he would have killed one or two of them. But you see, so drugs play a very critical role too in some of the criminalities that is going on. So we need to rid our youth of drugs. We need to rid our substance abuse. We need to actually see how we can this thing. And going forward, like we have said, even at the 2014 National Confab, which I was a delegate, we must start thinking about how going forward, are we going to continue rearing our animals like this? And if we say by the year 2070, Nigeria will be the 5th largest economy in this world, are we going to be rearing animals like this? We need to start thinking about ranching now. We need to start thinking about even changing this sort of cows that we have. Are they going to produce our dairy requirement? Are they enough to produce our beef requirement? I think we need to see, if we had not done poultry farming as it is now, we would have still been importing poultry products into this country. The earlier we start looking at the security implication, both in terms of physical security and food security, and find a way of getting these people to accept a way of life that we must start ranching, and then stop this free ranging and moving into people's farms, displacing communities and the rest. I told people that even in Saudi Arabia, they have some of the best ponies. They have ranches in Saudi Arabia. They don't have grass. They import grass from Brazil, Argentina. They import water to drink in Saudi Arabia, but they have ranches. So you can still have ranches in Kano, Sokoto, Jigawa, Katsina, and the rest, and import grass from Plateau, from Benue, from Niger, and from Kwara and Kogi, and take them up to those places and feed the animals there. So we need to look at the security concerns of these things. Security concerns of...
Brigadier General, for your thoughts there. We need to look at some of the issues that you have raised, and I believe that the authority concerns are also listening. You raised a lot of questions there, but let's move to our Kaduna studio, where we still have our security expert, Muhammad Ali, there. And my next question would be this issue of state police. You know, recently the Kaduna State governor said that the security problems currently facing the state and the country in general may not end until state police is established to support the effort of the existing security agencies. Do you agree with that submission?
Exception to that submission, because the problem of insecurity bedeviling Nigeria is not the absence of state police, but the inadequacy of the Nigerian police force. And it is clear, the Constitution says there shall be a police force that should be known as the Nigerian police force. And no other force will be created thereof apart from the Nigerian police force. So what we need is not the creation of state police. What we need is an improvement on the existing Nigerian police force, meaning we have to improve in the number of recruitments. For example, during the Buhari regime, he directed that 10,000 policemen be recruited each year. That is grossly inadequate. If we want to make up the number required and to meet the United Nations standard, meaning for one policeman to 400 people, what we have today is about one policeman to about 2,500 people, because the total number of men and women in the Nigerian police are below 350,000. So what we need to do is to improve our recruitment. From now to the next 10 years, we should make a projection that at least not fewer than 150,000 able men and women should be recruited in the Nigerian police, cutting across officer, cadre, and other ranks. This will be able to beef up the number so that we'll be able to police Nigeria, and effectively too. But where we make the mistake of creating state police, with the way some of our state governors are behaving like warlords, I think before you know it, we'll begin to have problem or even war between one state and the other. So it is better we treat this issue of state police carefully. Let us improve on the existing Nigerian police force. And by improvement, we need equipment, training and retraining, and welfare. If we look at these 5 basic things, I think the Nigerian police, they are able men and women. Whenever they go out for peacekeeping operations abroad, they excel. Why are they not excelling back home? Because they lack equipment, their welfare is not properly looked after, and there is no motivation. Let's motivate them and give them a chance. We will see wonders.
I'd like you to give us a rating of the Kaduna Vigilance Service, how it has fared, and if you think that it is, meeting its mandate. And then speak to us also about the Kaduna State Security Trust Fund Bill 2024, which was signed by the governor. How strategic is that in fighting insecurity in that state?
If properly managed, it will go a long way in assisting all the security forces domiciled in Kaduna in order for them to meet up to the challenges of combating crime and criminality. Back to your question on the Kaduna State Vigilance Service. The Kaduna State Vigilance Service is doing a very wonderful job, but the truth is they need a lot of motivation. You cannot bring people in to help in combating crime, but then you are leaving them unaccounted for or unfunded. This, I think, the issue of funding and salary coupled with equipment is what the Kaduna State Vigilance Service need in order to actually perform properly, in order to also aid other federal security forces operating in Kaduna State for them to meet up their mandate. This is very, very necessary. And quickly, to correct the impression of AIG, from the beginning of this discussion, I think he has a view, his view is most of the problems are domiciled in southern Kaduna. So, and again, that is, I think, born out of his impression of the crisis of 1987, 1992, and the 2011 post-presidential elections violence. Southern Kaduna, as we speak today, is not actually facing this endemic issue of the economy of violence, banditry, and insurgency. The problem is more in 5 local governments that are domiciled in Zone 2. Binningwari, Giwa, Igabi, Chukung, and Kajuru local government. These 5 local governments are all domiciled in Zone 2 of Kaduna State. And this is where the issue of banditry and kidnapping is endemic. And this is, again, because of the presence of elements of Ansaru and a breakaway faction of the Shekau faction that are already here living in Kamuku Forest under Birningwari local government. And in the southern Kaduna axis, we have Kauru local government, Kachia and parts of Zangon Katav local governments, time and again, they're also facing this problem of the economy of violence and banditry. But the zone 2 is more into it. This is where the issues are. And maybe the AIG's view is as a result of maybe reading some of the things that are put up in the social media, which is actually coated with a lot of misinformation. And I also want to clarify the position of Dr. Kabir. When Kabir talked about the issue of reducing the emirs to bring them under the supervision of local government chairman, he's saying the truth, and this is why security is failing. Even an ordinary village head is key in terms of communal security, not to talk of an emir. So if we are really serious about facing and aiding and bringing to an end the issue of insecurity, certainly we must upgrade our emirs. Let us give them a role that is none of them in the past, so that together we'll be able to bring to an end this madness of insecurity that 14 years down the line, we've not been able to do anything. We have been talking for too long. So it's now time for us to do some standing and take some action if really we want to bring an end to this issue of insecurity. The emirs, the village heads, the district heads have a role to play. They should be given a role. If they are given a role, certainly we will see changes.
Thank you very much, Muhammad Ali, a security expert there. The need for us to assign roles to our traditional rulers in order for us to be able to combat some of these challenges. I know that AIG Yaro, you still want to react to some of his comment there, but while reacting to that, I also want to ask, what do you hope to see at the, you know, there is a counterterrorism summit going on right now. So what do you hope to see at the end of this summit? What's your expectation?
Responding to the last segment of the question, I hope to see a lot of new innovations, positive innovations, accelerated actions, consolidated efforts, and tackling small arms terrorism, tackling it more in a more robust format, especially leveraging on the presentation of our president yesterday, which essentially delved on continental cooperation, integrated format, country-to-country synergy to ensure that terrorism and small arms are nipped in the bud, leveraging on that, and believing that the necessary legislation to be assented to, particularly the one structuring and empowering the National Agency for Small Arms and Light Weapons to be upgraded and properly constituted. Which,
all right, because of time, I think we'd have to, leave your response at that point. We're already out of time. But I'm sure we'll have a conversation some other time to talk about these issues and maybe the result of this counterterrorism summit. But just to wrap up the conversation, in 30 seconds, Dr. Kabiru, how can we solve this problem permanently?
We need to take ownership and responsibility for our future. Nobody, no outsider will come and solve this problem for us. And I'm speaking directly to political office holders. That responsibility, like is stated in section 14 subsection 2 of our constitution, lies squarely with them. And so they need to take up that responsibility. Now, tied to that is the need to use metrics. We can't, no matter how much you love somebody, if you use metrics to measure his performance, you will know whether the person is performing or not. So let's embrace metrics. As you know, I run a firm, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. We use metrics, so we're able to measure in clear terms to say there is improvement or there is no improvement. Every state governor, just like the Kaduna state government started under Rufai, and I think the Edo state government, they have that. All other state governments should have a platform for measuring their performance.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kabiru Ademo. I hear that the commercial department will hand you a bill for advertising your company. All right. So thank you so much. We do appreciate AIG Abutu Yaro retired AIG Zone 13. Of course, the long list. Thank you so much for joining us for the conversation
Thank you.
and your insight. We appreciate you. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, always a pleasure to have you. Muhammad Ali, security expert that joined us from Kaduna. Thank you so much for being our guest. And Brigadier General John Temlong, looking forward to having a conversation with you very soon, talking about the peace being experienced on the plateau and, an end to all the security situations in that state. Thank you so much, Brigadier General John Temlong. We do sincerely appreciate all our guests. So that's good morning, Nigeria, this Tuesday. Many thanks for being a part of it. I'm Yenri John. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And I'm Ademola Ade. Thanks for watching. Do have a fabulous day.